Hey everyone, PushingUpRoses here, and welcome back to my channel. Last year, I attended one of my favorite conventions, and no, it wasn't Comic-Con or DragonCon or VidCon, it was the Oddities and Curiosities Expo, featuring, but not limited to, taxidermy, bizarre artwork, live suspension, and a Ripley's Believe It or Not exhibit that featured a giant ball of human hair. What more could a woman ask for? It even had performers from modern sideshows. They lit up the stage with musical performances, dance routines, and body modification. I have a great interest in the strange and unusual. After 2 days browsing booth after booth of amazing artwork, I picked up a death's head moth and a mouse skull pendant and went on my merry macabre way. Sideshows in particular have always fascinated me, though as you may know, they haven't always been ethical. They were often exploitative and used people's medical conditions to draw in a crowd. Alongside the people with medical issues were the so-called self-made freaks, such as the heavily tattooed. In the late 19th century, people covered in tattoos were considered quite shocking since many viewers had never seen one. As an aside, this was a very lucrative career for tattoo artists as they could showcase their work almost constantly. Body modification is still a form of entertainment in modern sideshows and places that feature curiosities. Fortunately, the showcasing of people with genetic abnormalities such as conjoined twins or people with skin conditions has been phased out. By the late 1940s, they had lost their appeal and mystery, and yet they're still being used as such a main source of inspiration for movies and television and video games, and they're mostly portrayed in the same way, as though they never evolved from how they were in the late 19th century. That all being said, I will be talking about an episode of The X-Files that focuses on the murder of a sideshow performer and features actors and actresses who are well known in the, quote, freak community. Not only does this episode go entirely off the rails, not that The X-Files was even on any rails in the first place, it poses a lot of questions about how sideshows and their performers are depicted on screen. I'd like to share those thoughts with you today by using The X-Files to drive home some of my points. So strap in, we're going to be talking about freaks and geeks and their purpose in Humbug, episode 20 from season 2. As we begin the episode, we're greeted by two young brothers splashing around in a pool. Two rambunctious kids swimming at night without any supervision? Sure, sounds like a great idea. At first, the episode tries to frighten us by making us think someone is sneaking up on the kids, but it turns out to be their dad, also known as the Alligator Man. After the kids go to bed, something attacks him in the pool, causing a fatal wound. Our two favorite weirdos, Fox Mulder and Dana Scully, are sent to investigate. Honestly, the real mystery is Mulder's hair. It looks like a fluffy dandelion, each hair its own individual pappus. I imagine if you blow on it, it will disperse into the wind. In classic monotone fashion, Mulder describes the situation and Scully stares at nothing.
So what do you think, Scully? What are your initial thoughts?
I'm sorry, were you talking?
Imagine going through your whole life looking like this.
I don't know how appropriate this is, but Mulder and Scully attend the Alligator Man's funeral. Scully doesn't even hide the fact that she's staring at other sideshow performers. Her discomfort is palpable until one of them smiles at her. Aw, they're just like us. What is happening? No, you stay in there, damn it! This casket was expensive! After some Evil Dead shit, one of the performers hammers a spike into his chest in honor of his colleague. Mulder and Scully are super not into it.
I can't wait for the wake.
Didn't the wake already happen? They start interrogating some of the suspects who all work at the circus. First, we meet artist Hepcat Helm, who is diligently poking a latex mask with a stick. He operates the Funhouse, who refuses to call it one because he considers it a house of horror.
It's not some rinky-dink carny ride. It's a tabernacle of terror.
Yeah, it's a pyramid of poison. Hepcat tells the story of the Fiji Mermaid, a hoax exhibit created by P.T. Barnum, a humbug. He praises Barnum for being a genius since he was able to create such an obvious hoax and still draw people in to see it, even after publicly announcing it was fake. More specifically, this was the head and torso of a monkey sewn onto the tail of a fish. So what do you get when you sew a fish tail onto Barry Gibb? The Fiji Mermaid! Mulder speculates that the killer could be the Fiji Mermaid, and Scully is like, no.
Do you recall what Barnum said about suckers?
You're telling me you saw one illustration in a pamphlet, was told it was a hoax, and you still think it could be the Fiji Mermaid? Mulder and Scully decide to stay on site while they investigate the murder. Mulder asks Mr. Nutt, the hotel manager, if he also worked for the circus. He takes slight offense and tells Fox not to judge him for his height because he's able to get other jobs outside the circus. His diatribe is pretty much voided after he calls one of the other performers a tattooed cretin.
I warn you, you tattooed cretin! I have a licensed firearm and I'm more than eager for an opportunity to use it.
So much for not judging people by their appearance. They are taken to their trailers by Lanny, a sweet but often inebriated bellboy who used to work for the circus. His act was showing off an extra appendage, his brother Leonard. Mulder asks why he gave up his spot in the circus.
Mr. Nutt, the kind-hearted manager here, convinced me that to make a living by publicly displaying my deformity lacked dignity.
We get a sneak peek of the creature that murdered the alligator man earlier, and it's weird. I'm getting evil Cabbage Patch Kid. It kills Hepcat Helm in a similar manner. The next day, we're introduced to two other performers, the Conundrum and Dr. Blockhead. The Conundrum is a geek. Not like me, I'm a different kind of geek. In circus terms, a geek is somebody who performs grotesque acts on stage with an emphasis on eating things alive. Dr. Blockhead performs body horror stunts like hammering a nail into his nasal cavity and some escape artistry. Dr. Blockhead is actually quite knowledgeable about his craft, explaining to Mulder and Scully the art of body manipulation and resilience. Unfortunately, not only does this character use tools, he also is one, proving himself to be quite irritating. Wait, was the Conundrum in that cauldron the whole time? The fuck was he doing in there? Most of this episode is spent on the investigation. Scully does a lot of research after she talks to the Oddity Museum curator and figures that the sheriff of the town was also once a sideshow performer named Jim, the dog-faced boy. When they go to talk to him, they find him burying something in his backyard. I don't think it's gonna be a bone. Not one that isn't attached to a dead body, at least.
May I ask what you're doing?
We're exhuming your potato.
May I ask why?
Official police business? Fine, we wanted hash browns. He explains he had some warts, so he buried the potato under a full moon. This is the most believable thing in this episode so far. The Conundrum proves himself to be a responsible little weirdo and pays his rent check in advance. Unfortunately, as he leaves the trailer, Mr. Nutt is attacked by the demon baby Cabbage Patch thing. A skull pin is found in his hand, similar to the ones found in Dr. Blockhead's toolbox. Scully arrests him, but the feds are no good against Dr. Blockhead.
Did I not mention I'm an escape artist?
By escape artist, he means he can flail his hands around aggressively before Scully can get the cuffs on him.
What gives you fascists the right to do that?
You know, interestingly, I like a lot of what Dr. Blockhead has to say. He's just a little bit of a pretentious turd. Lanny has a rather violent response to everything, and the sheriff locks him up in the drunk tank. Later, when everyone checks on him, they notice something has left the cell through this tiny window. Scully puts it together and realizes it's his brother, Leonard. Yes, the twin can extract himself from Lanny, live outside his body, then come back at will.
But how?
That is a fantastic question that will not get answered. This is the X-Files, there's not going to be a solution. Lanny is devastated, having known about him murdering people. He explains that he doesn't want to hurt them, he just wants to find a new brother. It's unclear why. I thought it could be because Lanny was suffering from a drinking problem. By the end of the episode, he passes away from cirrhosis of the liver, and I wondered if Leonard wanted to find a new healthy body so he wouldn't die, but Lanny could have started drinking after he started witnessing the murders as well. It's never clarified either way. In fact, the end of this episode is really unsatisfying. The pair doesn't have to do much about Leonard because the Conundrum eats him. Literally just eats him. He devours the entire thing seconds after it had tried to attack him. This man could be in speed eating contests. You know how you can eat enemies in Final Fantasy VIII? That's what I imagine happened just now. Nobody realizes this, so they keep searching for Leonard. The next morning, Dr. Blockhead and the Conundrum pack up to start their own show. Scully briefly states that during Lanny's autopsy, she had seen body abnormalities she had never seen before, and Blockhead states that genetic engineering and eugenics will erase unique individuals like Lanny. He goes on to say that we obsess over finding the perfect body, if we refuse nature and conform to what society believes is beautiful, we'll all be carbon copies.
You see, I've seen the future, and the future looks just like him. Imagine going through your whole life looking like that.
Oh my god, what a shot! So perfectly posed, and look at those pants, they're huge!
Imagine going through your whole life looking like that.
I like this reference to when Scully asked what it would be like going through life looking like the Alligator Man.
Imagine going through your whole life looking like this.
She is concerned with people being outcast for looking different, while Dr. Blockhead is fearful that people will conform to impossible beauty standards and all look the same. Mulder approaches and asks why the conundrum looks so fatigued, to which he responds,
Probably something I ate.
"Oh boy." Right, let's talk about the story first. It was interesting. It was actually praised a lot for its writing when it was released, but I honestly think it falls on the side of bonkers X-Files episodes. In true X-Files fashion, the ending to this episode was somewhat unsatisfying, and I had a difficult time suspending my disbelief for this. Because the episode did go off those already shoddy rails for me, I found myself reflecting on other things beyond the story, like the portrayal of these characters as something abnormal, creepy, or inhuman. In the late 19th century, circuses would put people with physical and mental disabilities on display for people to gawk at, and for those people, it would be the only work they could get because they were typically ostracized from society. Some people even sold their own children to the circus, where they were subjected to abuse until their performance was considered satisfactory. Due to such a dark history, I understand why circuses would be used in horror. You might be familiar with the 1932 movie Freaks, which follows a group of sideshow performers. It was a massive failure at the time. People couldn't bear to look at the actors and actresses, most of whom had worked in the circus. It did a good job depicting them as normal people, who, in between their acts, led typical lives like everyone else. Modern critics praise it for giving them humanity and for its anti-eugenic statement. Now, this gets kind of lost when the group comes together to mutilate another character, making me wonder if the freaks were meant to be looked at as normal in the way that, because they are human, they're also capable of disturbing things. Despite the pros and cons of how they were portrayed, this gave the actors and actresses a chance to work in film. Which brings me back to the X-Files. Many of these actors are well known. The priest is played by Alvin Law, a motivational speaker who was born without arms due to his mother's use of thalidomide. Dr. Blockhead is played by Jim Rose, who founded the Jim Rose Circus, a modern-day freak show. He's still fairly well known in the industry and was even asked to tour with Nine Inch Nails in the mid-90s. The Conundrum is played by the Enigma, who was also a performer in the Jim Rose Circus. His act really did consist of eating things like crickets and worms and some sword swallowing. He's also really upped his body mod game since his appearance in this episode. Mr. Nutt is played by Michael Anderson, whom you may recognize from Twin Peaks as the Man from Another Place, and Lanny is played by Vincent Schiavelli, a character actor known for his distinct sad expression. He passed away from cancer in 2005. As I watched this episode and listened to the characters discuss their work, show pride for what they do, and lament the discrimination they received, I started to wonder if their portrayal was positive or negative. Throughout the entire episode, they aren't exactly likable. They're suspects in a murder case. The only time we really see someone living their day-to-day life is in the beginning with the Alligator Man, and he gets killed. Dr. Blockhead is portrayed as insufferable, the Conundrum is portrayed as animalistic, and even Sweet Lanny has a drinking problem. On the other hand, even though I do wish that the media would stop constantly portraying weirdos as potentially bad people, I also acknowledge the difference between being sold to a circus and being put in a cage like an animal, and choosing to perform as a character, like the Enigma does here. Yes, he's playing a very aggressive role in this episode, but his entire act is to provoke. It's as though he's doing his routine, not necessarily playing a character. Jim Rose also clearly adds himself to the role of Blockhead with his anti-eugenic sentiment. That is actually the main theme of his circus show. And I guess the main difference is dignity. Lanny said something earlier that spoke volumes. He said Mr. Nutt told him his performance was undignified, so now he carries luggage. But what makes that more undignified than any other job? And obviously, I don't think it's up to someone else to decide what you should or shouldn't be doing with your body. A show I really learned a lot from, despite it falling into the reality TV category and doing the same drama you would see in other shows, was Freak Show, which ran on AMC from 2013 to 2014. It followed a modern-day freak show and interviewed the performers about their routines, how they feel, and they often showed them educating the public on their conditions, destigmatizing them, really talking to people who came to see them out of morbid curiosity. They're not there to be gawked at, but to be talked to like human beings. I also think conventions like the Oddities and Curiosities Expo can be really encouraging, especially to my fellow spooky women. They can still honor the tradition of the sideshow, but bring in elements like respect and celebration for the unique. This whole topic actually reminds me of a Caitlin Doughty video on the Salem witch trials, the dark past becoming something of a kitschy interest for people. She said something that I would also like to reiterate, that it's okay to be curious about these dark things as an interest or sometimes as a hobby, as long as you remember where they came from. That all being said, I did like this episode, not necessarily for the main story, but how it was performed and some of the sentiments presented. With all this in mind, even though none of these characters did anything wrong and the performers consented to their roles, I still think it perpetuates some stereotypes, particularly with Mr. Nutt. I would be delighted to see fewer cliches, even if I did think this was a decent episode. Not gonna lie, my favorite moment was Mulder posing by a trailer wearing the baggiest pants ever made. It just doesn't get old. I know this video got a little bit rambly, but I really hope you enjoyed it. Oddities and things like body modification are some of my greatest passions, so this episode was really appealing to me. It was also interesting watching as somebody with body dysmorphic disorder. I took a lot of things Dr. Blockhead said to heart, even though he was just a tad bit brash.
What, are you sick?
If there's an episode of The X-Files you are just dying to see me cover, please leave a suggestion in the comments. The weirder the episode, the better chance it'll have at being covered. Until then, stay spooky and keep flying that freak flag. Hey everyone, thanks for watching my video on Humbug from The X-Files. I hope you enjoyed it, but first I want to give a shout out to my patrons who have given me so much support over the years. Thank you so much for keeping my channel afloat during such difficult times. It means so much to me. If you can't support me with money, no worries. Likes, shares, and comments also help and make me feel warm and fuzzy like mold. If you want to see more television retrospectives, I have some on the screen just waiting to be clicked on. On the right is my last Goosebumps video. I collaborated with another YouTuber to make it, and I think it turned out solid. On the left is an episode from my flagship series, That Time on Murder, She Wrote. Thank you again, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.